In 1985, the city of Philadelphia did something that still sounds too absurd to be true. Not in a war zone, not overseas. On an ordinary residential street in West Philadelphia, police dropped an explosive from a helicopter onto the roof of a house in a busy street. By the time the smoke cleared, 11 people were dead, including 5 children. 61 homes were gone. More than 250 people had been driven out. And the most haunting part of the story is this: the bomb was not the end of the disaster. In a way, it was the beginning. Because the MOVE bombings is one of those cases people hear in fragments. A headline, a shocking image, a sentence so surreal it sounds like conspiracy bait. Philadelphia bombed a neighbourhood. But that sentence, brutal as it is, still flattens what really happens. Because this was not one wild decision made in 5 seconds. It was the endpoint of years of tension, fear, political failure, neighbourhood anger, bad planning, militarised policing, and then one catastrophic choice after another. Tonight, we're not just asking how a city dropped a bomb on its own residents, but asking how so many adults in power kept making decisions after that bomb fell, and why the people who paid for it most heavily were the ones with the least power to escape it. To understand the bombing, you have to understand MOVE. MOVE was founded in Philadelphia in the early 1970s by John Africa, born Vincent Leopard. It was a black-led group with a belief system that rejected modern technology, distrusted government and corporations, and embraced environmental and animal rights activism. Members often took the surname Africa. But MOVE was not just controversial because of its politics. Its confrontational style, loudspeaker broadcasts, armed self-defence posture, and refusal to bend to city authority brought it into repeated conflict with police and with neighbours. In 1978, a previous MOVE standoff in Philadelphia ended in a police raid, a shootout, the death of an officer, James Ramp, and prison sentences for the MOVE 9. That earlier clash hung over everything that came later, like a storm cloud that never moved on. By 1982, some MOVE members were living at 6221 Osage Avenue in West Philadelphia. It was not an isolated compound in the wilderness, it was a row house on a city block surrounded by other row houses, other families, other lives. And over time, the situation curdled. MOVE blasted messages through loudspeakers day and night. Neighbours complained again and again. City Hall hesitated. MOVE fortified the house, including a rooftop bunker with openings that officials and neighbours viewed as gun ports. By late April 1985, frustrated residents had gone public, warning that they felt abandoned and endangered. That matters because a lazy version of the story turns everybody outside the house into cartoon villains and everybody inside into blank symbols. Real life was uglier than that. Neighbours were angry. City officials were scared of another 1978 disaster. Police were prepared for a major confrontation. And inside the house were adults, but also children. That last fact is the one that should have stopped everything. It didn't. Late on the night of May 12th going into May 13th, authorities evacuated the surrounding block. Roughly 500 police officers were involved in the operation. The city had arrest warrants for 4 adults and a court order tied to removing the children from the home. On paper, this was an enforcement action. In practice, it was a siege. At about 6 a.m, Police Commissioner Gregor Samber shouted through a bullhorn, "Attention, MOVE. This is America. You have to abide by the laws of the United States." He gave the occupants 15 minutes to come out. Nobody came out. What followed was not a brief scuffle. It was a sustained armed confrontation. Police used tear gas, high-pressure water hoses were brought in, officers opened fire in enormous volume. According to the later commission findings, police fired over 10,000 rounds in under 90 minutes at a row house known to contain children. That number is almost hard to hear properly. 10,000 rounds, not in a battlefield trench, on a residential block. And still, the operation was failing. Move had not been flushed out. The house was still standing. The city's show of overwhelming force had not produced control. It had produced stalemate. This is the moment where history gives you one last off-ramp. Call it off, contain the scenes, bring in negotiators, reassess, protect the children, protect the block, protect the people you claim to be rescuing. Instead, officials took a step so extreme that it still splits the mind when you say it out loud. They decided to bomb the house. Later that afternoon, with Mayor Wilson Good's authorization, a Pennsylvania State Police helicopter flew over 6221 Osage Avenue. From the air, police dropped an explosive device onto the rooftop bunker. Sources describe it as a satchel bomb, or a bomb roughly the size of a backpack, made with Tovex and FBI-supplied C4. It exploded almost immediately. A fire started. And here is the detail that makes this case go from horrifying to almost unbearable. According to later investigations and the historical accounts, city leaders decided to let that fire burn as a tactical measure, hoping it would destroy the bunker and force the occupants out. Firefighters were there, but the response was delayed. Communications were garbled. Command was confused, and the blaze kept spreading. By the time serious firefighting took hold, the fire was out of control. That is one of the most damning parts of the entire story. Because you can imagine, however weakly an official later claiming the bomb itself was some reckless tactical gamble, but the fire after the bomb was visible, it was growing, it was moving from one house to the next. This was the point where catastrophe announced itself in flames, and the city still failed to stop it. By the next morning, the 6200 block looked like it had been chewed through by war. 61 homes were destroyed, more than 250 people were homeless, 11 Move members were dead, including founder John Africa, 6 adults in total and 5 children. 2 people survived the inferno, Ramona Africa and 13-year-old Bertie Africa, both badly burned. Sit with that for a second. A city operation supposedly aimed at restoring order ended with a neighbourhood erased and children burned to death. And then came one of the most painful questions in the whole case. Could more people have gotten out? Historical accounts note that whether some of those inside were pinned down by gunfire or otherwise unable to escape remains a lasting point of dispute and anguish. That uncertainty matters, because it means the final minutes are not just tragic, they are haunted. Even the block itself kept carrying the story. The homes that replaced the destroyed houses became their own scandal, with poor construction and long-term fallout for residents who had already lost everything once. The disaster didn't end when the flames died. It kept echoing through the neighbourhood for years. After the bombing, a special inquiry known as the Move Commission investigated what happened. It heard from more than 90 witnesses. Its conclusion was devastating. The commission called the bombing of occupied row houses unconscionable. It also sharply criticised the planning, the command failures, and the decision that allowed the fire to consume the neighbourhood. That word, unconscionable, matters, because it strips away the camouflage language that institutions love to hide behind. Not unfortunate, not regrettable, not a tragic miscommunication, unconscionable. And yet, for all that condemnation, no city official or police officer was criminally charged over the bombing. In 1996, a federal jury found the authorities had used excessive force and violated constitutional protections, awarding $1.5 million to Ramon Africa and relatives of 2 people killed in the fire. Years later, other displaced residents also won damages over the destruction of their homes. That gap between what was acknowledged morally and what was punished legally is one of the defining failures of this case. Everyone could see the wreckage. The city itself could commission a report condemning what happened, but accountability still moved like smoke through fingers. If this were only a story about one terrible day, it would already be dark enough. But the aftermath kept mutating. Decades later, investigations into the handling of victims' remains found that the city records were incomplete and inconsistent, and that some remains had been kept, transferred, and handled in ways that sparked renewed outrage. In 2022, Philadelphia released an independent report recommending that all 11 victims' deaths be reclassified as homicides rather than accidents. That same year, officials said the death certificates had been amended accordingly. Think about what that means. For decades, the people killed when the city dropped a bomb on their homes and let the fire spread were not even officially described the right way. The paperwork itself had been made to look cleaner than the reality. History had ash on it, and bureaucracy tried to file it away. Philadelphia City Council later issued a formal apology in 2020, and in 2025 recognised the 40th anniversary with an official day of reflection and remembrance. Those gestures matter, but they also underline how long it took for the city to say in public that what happened in Osage Avenue was not just a tragedy, it was a civic failure of the highest order. So what is the verdict on the Move bombing? It was not a split-second accident. It was not just one bad call. And it was not merely a story of a difficult group and a dangerous standoff. It was the story of a city that treated a residential block like a war problem. A government that escalated when it should have stepped back. A command structure that used overwhelming force where children were present. And an institution that even after the flames struggled to tell the truth cleanly, handle the dead with dignity, or deliver real accountability. If you want the shortest possible version, it's this. Philadelphia did not just bomb a house, it bombed the idea that the state always recognises the humanity of the people it polices. And on Osage Avenue, that illusion burned for everyone to see. Some cases are dark because the violence is shocking. This one is darker because it was official, signed off, planned, explained, then half buried. And that's what makes it linger. Because the question isn't just how this happened in 1985, it's how many warning signs a government can step over before it starts calling catastrophe strategy.